All right, everybody. Allow me a brief introduction and to buy our speakers a little bit of their time back. We have two well-known, and many of you probably already know them by name and face, but I'll do the honors of just saying you to get this thing kicked off. First, we have Trish Martinelli, a dynamic innovation strategist and national security leader whose career spans critical roles in defense, intelligence, and technology. She's known for her ability to bridge operational needs, cutting-edge solutions, and has led transformative initiatives across the DoD, championing collaboration, rapid innovation, and human-centered design. Give it up for Trish Martinelli. Scott Stalker, somebody else I've known for a very long time, is a distinguished leader coming from a multitude of different platforms. You may know him from such things as the senior enlisted of Space Command and beyond. That was done on purpose. Nothing? Come on. It's the lunch. It's the lunch. That was quality work. He is a distinguished leader and speaker with over 30 years of experience in the Marine Corps and outside, including roles in space, cyberspace, intelligence, and special operations. He is the founder and CEO of S2 Stalker Solutions, a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business, and he drives leadership development and innovation across many different platforms, offering professional speaking and some coaching advice opportunities. I interacted with him when he was a senior enlisted leader, and he took upon a young gunny many years ago as a Padawan and helped propel me in my career to learn about areas that I was not familiar with. So the type of people that you're dealing with today are those that give to the community more than they take, and it's a special case in which we could have them both on stage to speak about really important things that we are today. So round of applause for both of these dynamic leaders.
Microphone on? Yes. That was a little loud.
They do work.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so I don't know if you guys know who was just introducing us, Mr. Brandon Smart, retired Marine as well. And if you want a deep cut on Brandon, I just want to share with you that he is not only an, can I say ass kicker? Yeah, I'm just going to say it. Ass kicker as well as a door kicker downer. The SMART Act, you may or may not have heard of. It is named after one Brandon Smart because he was the first enlisted member to attend Navy postgraduate school in professional military education and paved the way for other enlisted members to do the same. So I'd like to give it up a little bit for Brandon Smart. And one accolade that was left off of Mr. Scott Stalker's bio here, probably the thing he's most proud of this week, is he is the father of a brand new kindergartner.
Kindergartner, first grader,
yeah. So that was first day of school yesterday. Yep. So glad to be able to draw him in on Tuesday after that big day. So really, really great to be here. Scott and I met a couple of years ago here on this very stage on another panel and have been great friends and colleagues ever since. So we want to talk a little bit about two things: future-proofing contracting and innovation in the Defense Department. And wow, great hand waves. But I am a firm believer, and I was trained well in the military, 21 years in the Army, to say, okay, if we're going to talk about something, how about we start by defining it? So this is where people get nervous in defense innovation, because no one wants to define it so that everything can be anything. But for the sake of this conversation, I'll start by saying innovation in the Defense Department is something new that creates value and carries risk. And that third part is especially important where what we do, okay? Because risk in the Defense Department is radically different than risk in the commercial sector. Like if we fail in our risk assessments and our risk mitigation, people's lives are on the line. Not their jobs, not their income, but their lives. So again, for the purpose of this, an innovation in the Defense Department, we'll just say, is something new that creates value and carries risk. And I would like to kind of turn that over to you, Scott, to talk about future proofing.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to lay the groundwork here, 2 days ago, it'll be 2 years since I retired from the Marine Corps as a Master Guns. Really great to see so many teammates, uniforms, and out. I never thought that I would be on this side of it now with industry, looking at how we can provide opportunities and value to the department. Yesterday was an important day, and so no matter what was going on, I was not going to miss the first day of school for my children. That's something I now have the pleasure of saying yes or no to. But later in the day, I got a call specifically about this from a major contract company that was looking at Golden Dome as a specific issue. And as it relates to future-proofing and everything there, I said, listen, knowing that General Gutlein is in the seat and knowing who's running what and all of the things that both the Space Force, NORAD, NORTHCOM, all the requirements said, if we're going to get this right, the most important thing is the problem statement. We have to be able to tell industry exactly what we're looking for. Otherwise, we will not future-proof it. We will have a ton of tech, a ton of capability, and a ton of money spent that goes into a program such as Golden Dome. And quite frankly, you can pick your program. It doesn't have to be just that one. It could be any of them. And we will have provided what was asked for. And then 5 or 10 years after the administration leaves and the new administration's in, they will say, what the heck is this? This is a waste of money, and so on and so forth. And it happens over and over and over again. And so as I look at the term, which I have not used before, future-proofing in industry, I really focus on how do we frame the problem. Very similar to how we do things in the Corps and across the Joint Force. Problem framing is critical. Let's really identify what the requirements are so that industry, the commercial sector, the private sector, academia, what I call the whole of society approach, can go after and build to that and provide what we're looking for. And then both the department gets what we're looking for, and industry can win and earn the right contracts, and going forward, we have that great partnership. If not, what we often have is the department saying industry didn't give us what we wanted, and industry saying we got a garbage requirement. Right. And so that's how we really have to get at future proofing, is focusing on what it is exactly we need. Because every time I've seen it, if we ask industry to provide, they're gonna overachieve. But I rarely see it when we're really good at defining the problem statement.
Right. It kind of brings to mind, and I'm going to use this as a simple example, a relatable example. One time my father, he's 83 years old, he's a Marine, so I tried to join the Marine Corps, but the recruiter wasn't there that day, so I ended up in the Army. I'm sorry. So my dad one time was just really twisting my arm. He's like, I've got to get a fax machine. I've got to get a fax machine. So has anybody found a fax machine recently in their office? Like they're not there anymore.
The Wilmington VA, who said it? I heard
there
it.
You go.
They still want you to fax.
So a fax machine. And hey, my dad's asking me for a fax machine. I jumped through every hoop to find a fax machine and couldn't do it. So finally I just said, Dad, what do we need this fax machine for? Do I have to go to a Target and buy one? He's like, well, there's this paper that I signed and my insurance agent needs it. I'm like, okay, take out my phone, take a picture of it, put in the email, and off it goes. He's like, but they need my signature. I'm like, Dad, they now have your signature. So requirements are really important because you might think that you need a thing. And I think this happens a lot in technology right now. You might think that you need this thing, this brand name thing that maybe is out in the commercial marketplace, but what you really need is the capability.
Yeah.
And you've got to ask those questions.
Prior to at Space Command, I was at Fort Meade, NSA Cybercom, and I remember the early conversation about JADC2 coming out. And we then realized, wow, we actually do this with partners and allies. Well, let's throw a C on it, CJADC2, combined, right? And it just, we started so poorly early on with the requirements that we added these bolt-on parts. I'm not putting it out to pasture yet, but I'm interested in if we can course correct to get something like that done correctly, because we didn't start off very well early on, recognizing how we fight partners and allies. We got to be able to communicate see, characterize, and understand. And so build something to that capability, send out the task to industry, and they can get there. And now, as I talk to folks on the government side, they're saying, yeah, we're having some issues. We got to go back and fix this. And it's akin to fixing the plane as it's in the air.
Right. Yeah. And that's we just can't do that to our warfighters. You know, we can't put the responsibility on them to become the feedback loop of, you know, the tech or the idea was half-baked to begin with.
Right.
We do need to listen to them at all times, but, you know, we can't transfer that responsibility of developing the right capability at the right level to them. So I had a little bit of a question about the best pathway. So, you know, recently you've been at command levels, and I'm wondering, what pathways have you used successfully, or what pathways would you design ideally if I needed an invisibility cloak? You know, how would you, if you've finally determined that that's the capability that you need, what's the best pathway that you've seen, or one that you would design to get that demand signal out into industry or out into the space where it could be fulfilled?
Yeah, there's a variety of different forums. I know we're going through a bit of heavy seas that relates to symposiums and that, and we'll fix our true north here shortly. But what I have seen, let me take space as an example. We would have the annual space symposium right there in Colorado Springs, and that was an opportunity where industry would reach out to us, specifically the J8, which handles acquisitions and contracts, and they would say, hey, we would like to get 15 minutes with the commander, the deputy, whoever, possibly even myself, and let them know what capability we had. And I remember early on sitting with the 8 and saying, maybe we should flip it a little bit, still have those, but go out to them and say, here's what we need. Because we do it differently. So if you think annually we have testimony season, you'll always have the combatant commanders will go first. They'll talk about the threat. They'll talk about their GIPL, their Joint Integrated Priority List, and they'll lay that out. And then normally the Secretary of Defense and the chairman will go next with the CIO, CTO, and they'll talk about the president's budget and if the funding is there to meet the threat and the priorities of the combatant commands, and then the service chiefs will go last. Often they'll get beat up for not providing what the combatant commands have asked for, and it's kind of an annual cycle. And so what I said is, let's let them know what our GIPL is, our Joint Integrated Priority List, within releasability,
Right.
so that it's not just them making an invisibility cloak, which would be incredible.
I'm here
especially for those of us that have occasionally sat on 95. That'd be pretty cool.
Yes.
Or the tunnel.
Yeah.
But make the thing that we actually need.
Right.
Whether it's an ability to communicate differently. We looked at the threat, right? So for example, obviously we know within the first island chain, there's a lot of challenges in the electromagnetic spectrum that China has laid out. Okay, how are we going to still communicate with that threat? How are we going to navigate?
Right.
How are we going to do a variety of different things? And so that is the way. There's other combatant commands. You know, Transcom has the NDTA, and they lay out things that way. And so what I would say is there is no one-stop shop.
Right.
And there never should be. Oftentimes it's relationships. I think relationships are critical on almost everything. But then it's also knowing strategically which forum and event to go to. And some of the senior leadership I've talked to recently, I've told them, you may want to relook at all of the symposiums and forums that are out there today. I was at Soft Week a few months ago, jam-packed. That was rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
I was at a different service one, low energy. So maybe reevaluating which ones we should go to and where should we be, so we can talk about our invisibility cloak,
Right.
but talk about it as it relates to what they need. And there is a truth to it, right? We know Steve Jobs talked about often, they don't know what they need. Okay, right? We didn't know we needed the iPhone until we got the iPhone. There's some truth to that, so you got to be able to have the other side of it. And that's where I think getting the relationships with those eights, with those acquisition officers, with those small business offices, so that you can tell them what you have and talk about how do we provide this for them. And anyone that's been, and many of you, I see some of my mentors out here, many of you have been doing this far longer than I have. You know that it doesn't happen overnight, but through persistence, continuing to be able to tell a story on how this fits into your capabilities, Oftentimes, that's how you're going to win business.
Right. And, I heard you talk a little bit about some experimentation in there. And Bonnie Evangelista was invited. She could not make it today, but I had a chance to speak with her this morning. And she said, Trish, if you don't talk to this audience about prototyping and what's available, I will come for you. And she's going to be here tomorrow. So I had to take this seriously. So if you're not using your contracting officers and leveraging prototyping authorities, you need to talk to Bonnie, and you need to take a look, and I made a note, at 10 USC 4022. So prototyping is being highly encouraged now with the CSO contracting platforms that have been written into executive order and encouraged at the highest levels of the Defense Department. But prototyping doesn't have to be a technology. Can I say that again? Prototyping does not have to be a technology. It can be a new methodology of how you experiment with stuff like management, logistics, and things that we all care about. If you have ever said, why don't we do it like this? You have just invented a prototype. Go to your contracting officer and say, what kind of prototyping authorities do we have? Can we use other transaction authorities? Can we use a CSO? Can we use some of these things that are being very much encouraged? Because honestly, look, the days of admiring this problem are done. We are being outpaced by adversaries, and we can't play this game anymore of, oh, I'm sorry, someone told me once as a contracting officer, if I do this, I will lose my warrant. That's just gossip. You cannot be a mission impediment because someone gave you a rumor a long time ago. So I'm going to break down my dream team of people. If you're not following their work in terms of contracting, rapid acquisition, outpacing stodgy contracting, here's my dream team.
This is where the Marine Corps instructor taps his foot and then we write the notes. I remember this. I'm well trained.
What was it, Pivot this morning or Snap? I can't remember.
I remember all that.
Bonnie Evangelista, Polly Hall, Dolores Cucina Musina, who is also known as Dr. OTA. She literally wrote her doctoral thesis on this. Ryan Cannell at CDAO, and of course, one of my favorite Marines, Frank Kelly, who's now back in the Defense Department and came out of Defense Acquisition University. So, if you've got questions about how to outpace and outskirt some of the contracting quicksand, that's my dream team of who I follow. Yeah. The U.S. code is 10 USC 4022. And like I said, Bonnie Evangelista will be here tomorrow on a panel that I'll be moderating. So, if you have any questions about rapid acquisition and contracting, Bonnie is your person. But I think that, have you seen kind of that season of a fundamental realignment with DoD contracting for innovation?
I've seen both sides of it. I've seen fear-based decisions and lack of energy to move forward on things, tools, technology, AI, and such, because of a misunderstanding or an idea that what we can or cannot do. And there's a way to approach that. You can be frustrated or look at it as a way to educate and inform, right, where appropriate. So I have seen that. I haven't seen an overwhelming more amount on the other side of that, where people are saying, hey, you've got a prototype, you've got to do this. And so I don't know how new some of that is, but right, to me, I never thought, hey, this is the only way. When it's the only way, it's a surefire way of losing, especially right, as competitive as this is, especially as hard as it is to win contracting work, to do anything, is you've got to have the relationships. You got to know all those people. By the way, the third person's last name, wow. If anyone wrote that down, you're a winner.
Dolores Cucina Musina, yes.
Right. And so you want to know Dolores Cucina Musina?
Yes.
Okay, you want to know her. And you want to understand the codes as well. So it's something I'm still learning, again, just a few years into this myself.
Yeah. Show of hands if you're in the DoD. Just give me a show of hands. Okay, Marines, you really need to show me your hands. And leave your hands up if you are currently using a trusted AI platform in your work. So we heard Camo GPT. Yeah, that's a very small group. All right, so the Tradewinds Marketplace. Show of hands, who's familiar with that? Okay, great, good sampling there. But if you have AI anything, if you are thinking, okay, I need to do maintenance on my ships in the shipyard. I need to, I think MREs for Marines was brought up earlier today. Like if I need to know how many MREs for Marines, there is probably an artificial intelligence application for that. You know, and most people in the DoD are like, okay, great, well that's there and it can't touch my sensitive data. But the Tradewinds Marketplace actually has approved AI platforms that you can go in and make purchases against. It's kind of like, what's the GSA catalog? Is that, where you can get office supplies. So if you haven't looked at Tradewinds Marketplace in association with your artificial intelligence needs, I would highly recommend that. And I think this is an example of really competitive contracting processes being put into action. So what Tradewinds does is if any commercial solution is artificial intelligence anything, they can submit a 5-minute pitch, and once it's evaluated as appropriate and meeting DoD standards, it goes into this marketplace for purchase. Would that have been a game changer when
Huge.
you were?
Yeah, I mean, just you think of the speed, the ability to use it, and every day I use AI, probably several hundred times a day.
Right.
Personally, professionally, it's a game changer, and I worry that the risk aversion to it and the misunderstanding of it can lead to us falling behind in other ways.
Right.
There's certainly, listen, I fully understand the intelligence and the cybersecurity threats and opportunities there, so we have to do it wisely. But I think saying we're not going to use it is a horrible idea. Just as similar, when I was at Space Command, we would often have this idea that we will always have SATCOM and GPS, and then I would speak to the Marines at the sergeant's course and say, please continue to use your map and compass and tactical radios. Like, both sides are accurate. You have to still do the basics and fundamentals, but also understand the capabilities of tech that could potentially offset or leapfrog your abilities today.
He just gave me a little PTSD of some wait a minute vines in South Carolina in my basic training. But I feel confident in the middle of the night with a compass. I can get where I need to go. So I'd like to talk a little bit, about risk. So we talked a little bit about how that's a fundamental of innovation and finding a good balance for risk aversion and risk tolerance. And I think that's something that you are just deeply familiar with. When you're looking at the landscape right now of how to get emerging technology or something of a prototype nature to the Marines that need it, how would you, if this was a strategy discussion with Stalker Solutions, how would you talk to me a little bit about how to find the right balance of risk in a very new environment in terms of technology and innovation?
I think you have to meet the customer where they are. And one of the things that concerned me in my last assignment was when I had a great opportunity with my commander to go to 8th and I. The commandant hosted us, had his 3 stars and the ACMAC there as well. And we walked them through for hours the threat in space. And that helped to inform decisions on force design. Now, when you're talking to Marines about how space can help them, if you're not going to be able to speak their scheme of maneuver, how they're going to operate, force design, all of that, you're going to get lost literally in the stars. So just coming in there and talking about apogee and perigee and LEO and GEO and all these other things, I'm not pointing fingers at who's wiser than someone else, but that's not the battle space that most Marines, unless you're an MSO or someone else, lives in every day. And so an example that we use was, listen, in force design, the idea is to be inside the first island chain. And the threat today is one that If you remember, President Xi years ago said that they're going to reclaim these islands, and he told us not to worry, we're not going to militarize those islands. And then, of course, what did he do? He militarized those islands, not just with increasing his distance for putting aircraft on them, but also by putting jammers on there. And so the conversation was, listen, once you're inside this first island chain, there's a very real threat, non-kinetic threat, that you're not going to be able to communicate, you're not going to be able to navigate. So what do we do to defeat that? And one of the ways was, hey, there is this system, this is all in class, of course. Next-gen GPS exists, it's in the sky today. Yeah. Marine Corps, as you go out and look at your budget and you go through what is prioritization for you, here's what you will need is those receivers to get the signal, known as M code. You're going to need to be able to receive the M code signal. And so you need to buy these receivers, all right? And then the commandant and the DCs and everyone have to make decisions. They got to rack and stack, right? Okay, the barracks, this and that. They got to rack and stack, limited funds, we get it. And then they purchase what they can. And so the way I think you always have to go about this is to talk to the customer where they're at.
Right.
Not say, hey, sailors, you need more space. Well, why do you need more space? Maybe we need it for deception, right? And we saw a great use of deception earlier on in a recent operation involving Iran. So, or for a variety of reasons, but speak to them in their language, in their scheme of maneuver, and the way they operate, instead of just sitting up there and trying to prove you're the smartest person in the room and you can speak the beeps and squeaks of SIGINT and all these other things, because if it's not relevant to them, they're not going to understand what you're talking about, and they're likely not going to purchase it. They may just be, I don't know what that was.
Right.
This guy's really smart, she's really smart, but I don't get it. And so you have to go to their operational needs and how they do things, whether it's the Air Force, the Army, so on and so forth. And listen, it's not a perfect way, but I think I have seen greater success that way than just coming in and say, hey, we have the next this. You can look in history, Colonel Billy Mitchell, I think it was 1918 or so, he thought of this crazy idea to use aircraft to bomb ships. They said, you are nuts. The Secretary of the Army and the Secretary of the Navy said, you're crazy. Those are flying kites. Air power would never work. It's worthless. He went out and tested it. He proved it. He got a little choice words with them. He got actually demoted from 1-star to colonel, but he was right.
Yeah.
It's the way he went about it that didn't work out. All right. So it's the same thing in today's world with space and cyber. We've got to look at it as not so much this capability that is bolt-on, but how do we truly use this, in the words of Secretary Gates, as an offset to put us so far ahead of an adversary that they're just going to say, you know what, not today.
Yeah.
And we started this in the Gulf War with PGMs, precision-guided munitions, smart bombs, warheads on foreheads, and we continue to get better and better with it. But the adversary has also caught up as well. So long way of saying, I think you have to meet them where they are instead of expecting them to get smart about you.
Right.
Because that just doesn't work.
That brings to mind, I think, a lot of discussion that we've had about the culture of innovation inside the Defense Department. And if you've never seen the famous clip of Adam Grant, a kind of distinguished thinker and philosopher, testifying before Congress, where he, kind of banged his fist on the table and looked at senators and said, the culture of the Defense Department is a threat to national security when it comes to innovation and adoption. And there are pockets of innovation, and I think it blossoms, especially under a innovative commander. But there are ways to go to make it a department-wide culture of innovation. And I'm wondering if you have some thoughts on how we might be able to foster that culture.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at Ukraine, right? So they may not have the MIT Lincoln Labs, they may not have all of the things that we have, but because it's either die or survive, they're figuring it out. Mm-hmm. I was at the evening parade this last Friday. The director of National Intel was there. The DCI hosted her, and we had some interesting conversations about unmanned. And I had a kind of a provocative statement. I said, I don't think the people in the Pentagon are villains. I think, everyone there, for the most part, is trying hard, good people, civilians, officers, enlisted, you name it. Everyone's rowing predominantly in the same direction, but you get caught up in this bureaucratic challenge. And so I was provocative. I said, if I were given the opportunity to run an unmanned platform task force, if you will, I would want lieutenants and lance corporals. And I would not allow anyone senior to them. I would send them to 29 Palms or wherever. I did 5 years there, so I can say that.
I'm sorry.
1-7 and 7th Marines. Loved it, actually. But that's what you do out there. You train, you figure it out, give it to them, and I would be willing to bet you can take your best regimental commander, your best leaders, if you will, that those lance corporals and lieutenants would outpace those senior leaders. Not because those senior leaders are bad or not good at what they do, but because the speed at which those individuals could fail, learn from failure, think through it, innovate, and they would come up with things that we could never figure out in the Pentagon with some 20-page paper to say how we're going to implement that. They would just do. And I think more often than not, with technology, with these other things, I would prefer, and maybe you got to have some supervision there, right? We'll bring Brandon in, or a colonel, a general officer. But I would prefer give it to those junior enlisted, those junior officers, because at the end of the day, when we think mission command and how we're actually going to fight, if God forbid that fight happens, it is going to be lance corporals, staff NCOs, lieutenants and captains that are getting this done, and they're the one that's going to be able to out-innovate. I don't think anyone in here would say, no, it's better to innovate from the Pentagon instead of the way I'm saying to this. And there might be different ways to do it, but you just look at Ukraine and how they're figuring out because they have to. Innovation, right? It's the mother, what is it? The mother of innovation?
Necessity is the mother of innovation. Yeah.
Those words are in there somewhere. But you get my point.
I do.
Is those are the ones that are going to be innovate. I would do that with tech. I would do that with every single thing I could, to include, let them think through how would we redo the infantry, right? Obviously, we're not marching online like we once did in the Civil War and beyond, and now you shoot and I shoot, like that is probably not good. How should we be doing maneuver warfare? How should we, I saw a really crafty presentation at 29 Palms several years ago. This major had gotten up and they had talked about how they were able to maneuver and not be seen. And they were briefing their commander, and they said they left everything on. They left all of their signals. They left it. They remained loud and noisy, and they maneuvered without anything. And so when the joint fires went to register and hit them, they didn't see them. They just saw equipment, and they were able to use deception that way. So thinking through those things, I think, is better. And oftentimes, and I think too, as an older guy now, I'm 50. It's being humble enough to say, the brilliance is always going to be in the young individuals. Yeah. We may have to shape it a little bit. We may have to say, here's the mission orders, here's the commander's intent. You come up with your best ideas. Right. And I think they're going to surprise you more often than not.
I think that's well said. I mean, and it's a kind of a mind shift. And you're doing some work with the National Defense University, is that right?
Yeah. I'm a senior fellow there. That allows me to keep my clearance and remain a bit relevant. I go up there in January and teach a few courses. But it's every time I go up there, I'm hearing, and I say young people, good Lord, 35, 40, but they're younger and they're thinking through things. And I always come away, wow, okay, I'm the senior fellow. I'm learning from all of you. Yep. Maybe it's a new application, it's a new way, it's a new US code, whatever. I mean, it's just being humble enough to know that it's reciprocal, goes both ways.
Yeah, I mean, I've done some writing about if we really want a culture of innovation to take, hold in the Defense Department, I don't think we reinvent it from scratch. We look at what cultures do we already have that have taken hold, and what are the earmarks of that. So in my theory, I say we create a J10, which is, another staff office. No, we really need commanders at every level to be thinking about innovation. And the tools that are available to an 03 at a company level command are hugely distinct and different than a 3-star. But if you don't plant those seeds early, of how do you do contracting? How do you do demand signal? How do you tell the difference between someone who's coming in and selling you snake oil with a great PowerPoint deck versus that critical capability? And I'm sure you've probably had to navigate that pathway as well. Like, how do you, people come in and say, this will solve all your problems.
Yeah.
How do you get to the root of who's on it?
Yeah, so normally if someone was going to do an industry day, we would require a one-pager. And the first question, what does this mean? Because some very brilliant people can schmooze you and make you think they have invented that invisibility cloak. But at the end of the day, what does this mean? How does it help the warfighter? How does it help the decision maker? And if it really isn't in one of those two bins for the most part, it's probably for another department or for somebody else.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that we have a few minutes left.
Oh, geez, that
would
was fast.
love, I know, we could go. So I would love to open it up to the audience for questions about innovation, about future proofing, about some of the experiences that we've had around the defense innovation ecosystem, or anything else.
Ma'am. I think we're getting a speaker to her.
Yep.
Who made you walk the furthest distance?
All steps are good steps.
Amen.
Thank you. Just hearing you talk about the innovation and across the DoD, my first thought goes to the CIBR program, and it's coming up for renewal. So thinking about that, how serious do you take the CIBR program and then into the STTR program?
Okay, so just if I'll take the first hack at that.
Take the
Scott.
whole hack, because there's also another thing you do in retirement is when you don't have a good answer, you pass on to the expert. Yeah.
So the SBIR, Small Business Innovation Program, and the STTR for more scientific and technical programs are programs whereby the Defense Department puts some seed money in and gives a little bit of traction to early technology. And the hope is that the first cut of the invisibility cloak, which works kind of well, will get into the DoD slipstream, go on a pathway with DoD money and a DoD client, and actually move from just the one piece of cloth that kind of works to an actual invisibility cloak that makes you impossible to see. So these are programs that have been championed and were at risk 3 years ago of being discontinued. So what I can say is that the track record is meh. Sometimes we get people into a CIBR phase 1, which is that first cut, and they gain traction and they get to a technology readiness level a little bit higher, and they kind of follow that pathway that we want. But where our bureaucracy and our processes are killing people is in CIBR phase 2, where a company has put a lot of work and effort into advancing technology, and it is successful. So the invisibility cloak is working better, but at that second phase, after the company has put in so much time and investment, both in effort and dollars, they said, yeah, your technology works, but we're just not going to buy it. So this is really frustrating for the companies, very frustrating. In my work that I was doing last year in the SecDef's Office of Small Business Programs, we saw this all the time. And warheads on foreheads on the other side of the world we can do, but somehow we can't seem to match the guy in the front row here with the blue jacket who's got the invisibility cloak with the lovely lady by the door in the back that really needs it. We can't seem to figure out how to put the two of them together. We're making progress, but progress that, in my opinion, clearly not the DoD's position, is not worthy of continuing to fund it at the levels that we do until we can unmess ourselves up. When we can get technologies that are proven that we've put seed money into, because why are we putting seed money into something that will never get to the technology level that we need? And we get in our own way of making that ceiling that they can't bust through. So there are refinements and improvements that probably need to happen in the CIBR program in order to get the congressional momentum behind it, because it was hanging by a thread the last time it was approved. It almost didn't get approved. And there are a lot of amazing technologies, and I'll foot stomp one of them. It's the overhead satellite technology that let us know that the Russian massing on the Ukrainian border was not routine military stuff. And that actually came up through a SIBR-SITR program through the National Security Innovation Network and eventually up to the Defense Innovation Unit and on contract. So really made a big difference in how we do warfighting. Long answer to say, it really is going to depend on congressional appetite. And congressional appetite, I think, will be very much steered by success stories out of the last 3 to 5 years of the SIBR-SITR program, which we're not doing so great with, and the Department of Defense, fixing the problem of having promising technologies and matching them to the warfighters that need them.
We got time for any more? Sorry.
I work on JRAC, and we're working on a new whole operation.
We need you to take the mic.
Joe Coulter from Neptune Shield, but I do
Mic
innovation
sounds
hubs
nice.
around.
Yeah.
So the question is, we are not prepared for the regular warfare. They're going to target operational systems. We don't have an operational intel agency. We don't have an innovation for operational regular warfare. So I think we have a lot of intrusion into our federal labs that concern a lot of people, especially DOE. I was shocked. So I was asked 3 years ago by people who have clearances way beyond. I don't have a clearance, but they said, Joel, we need private innovation hubs tied to other new rapid acquisition cells that get us in and out in 6 months to a year. So I work with SOCOM, and I know how fast. They were asked one time, do you think what you do can transfer to other military? We do things totally different than the rest of the military because we're willing to take systems and put them in the field. Mm-hmm. And if they don't work, okay, grab me another one, and go, let's go. I think we can get there, but I think the British and the Australians have a lot to teach us about how they do the human machine team measurement stuff in their labs that we don't do, because I think sometimes when Robert Kennedy said, well, why are you running for president? The oligarchs run the government. What do you mean? Well, DoD works for Lockheed, the CIA works for Raytheon. I'm not saying it, but the industrial defense base I worked on they forced me to go into Raytheon, and I said, no, I don't work for you. I work for DIA. So there's going to be a whole new thing coming down the pike, but I do believe that human agility and impact, if you add the human to it, it's going to have to be that part of it too.
Well, let me say this, sir, and I would say there's a reason we do conceal and there's a reason we do reveal.
Yep.
There's certain things, haven't had access to some fairly classified things out there. There's certain things we want folks to know, and there's obviously a lot of things we don't. So there's more that we have in the basket than we want our adversaries to know, and I'm not super excited about everything we have, but I also know there's an awful lot that we're doing, have, and can punch with both hands. So I don't think it's complete doom and gloom, but the reason we have sensitive access programs and other compartmentalized things is so that not everyone needs to know. Hopefully it's well integrated with the warfighter and that sort of thing. So I'm not as pessimistic as maybe you are.
No, I'm very hopeful.
Because I know some of the things that are out there, and I'm glad that we don't talk about them. I wish there were less New York Times articles sometimes. I know we got to run, Brandon. Hey, if I may, and then I'll turn it over to you.
Sure.
Because quite frankly,
Yeah.
you're the brains here. Hey, last name is Stalker, just spelled like the federal crime. Very easy to find. You want to reach me on LinkedIn, shoot me a note. Would be happy to talk to you about whether it's Marine Corps things, joint things, transition into retirement, business, or you've got some words of wisdom for me. As I said, I've got some teammates in here that have helped me along the way, and I'd be happy to help you. So you can find me on LinkedIn. Thank you, Brandon and Trish, and please.
Well, actually, that was my last. I was like, Scott, how can people get in touch with you if they want to talk more? So perfectly, and thank you, Brandon. Back over to you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, everybody give him a round of applause. Thank you so much.